Hello and welcome to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. I'm your host, Sean Zerillo, joined today by Grant Neefer from Scores and Odds and Jim Turvey from Roto Grinders for a very special edition of Payoff Pitch, drafting our top player props for the 2025 season. And if you missed any of our divisional preview episodes, those are all live and can be found in the Payoff Pitch feed during the regular season. We'll have bets for you every Monday, Tuesday, and Friday mornings. So make sure to subscribe to the pod so you don't miss out on those episodes. We're going to have a little fun, as I said, with the snake draft. I'm going to go first since I'm hosting. Then I'm going to toss it to Grant for the second pick, to Jim for his first two picks, then back to Grant and myself, and so on. We're going to go 5 rounds to cover the board. You can go any direction you want. Season-long player prop, over, under, regular season stat leader, etc. Any direction the guys feel like going, they can give out their favorite prop in for that round. And I'm going to start off with Bobby Witt as the Major League hits leader at 8-1. Jim, myself, BJ Cunningham, I believe everybody in the world was on Witt hits leader at 30-1 or higher last year. I projected him 6th coming into last season. We saw plenty of value at 30-1. I project him as the Major League leader this year after leading the league last year. I make his odds to lead the category about plus 650, have him winning roughly 13% of the time. He's phenomenal. And I think Bobby Witt is actually only going to continue to get better. But this dude absolutely punishes the baseball. And I actually don't have a significant worry that he's going to start adding a lot more walks to his game and becoming more patient, which would take him out of this category. Essentially, we talked about a player like Corbin Carroll, gets on base a ton, not a guy you want to bet as Major League hits leader, even though he has that very high OBP because he has about an 11% walk rate. Don't know where Bobby Witt's walk rate is offhand, but he just puts the bat on the ball a ton. He's more of a free swinger, and that's the kind of guy that you want to bet into at this category. So I project him around 185 hits on the season. As I said, about a 13% chance to win. So 725 plus 725 or better on Bobby Witt hits leader. One of my favorite player props for this season. Got to go ahead and toss it to Grant. What's your first pick?
So the first one I'm rolling with is Jake Burger over 24.5 home runs. Also like his 40-plus home runs at plus 680 over at FanDuel. I mean, Berger is a guy that has been consistently good over the last 2 years. He's in, as you always like to mention, his peak power year of 28. So he's kind of getting into his prime. We don't have a huge sample size of him, but the sample size we do have is pretty darn good. Last year in Miami, only 29 home runs, and I say only because first half of the season, he was kind of dealing with some injuries. And you look at the splits first half versus second half. First half, 73 games, 10 home runs. Second half, 19 home runs in 64 games. We look at the StatCast data, and last year you can kind of see with the injury, like mid-80s for most of the hard hit, barrel, average exit velocity. But we look at 2023, he's high 90 percentage in all those, 16.7% barrel rate in 2023. Gets a ballpark upgrade going from Miami, one of the worst ballparks in the leagues for righty power, all the way over to Texas, who's been pretty good over the last 3 years. The guy is just a great hitter and a great power bat. And he's in a pretty decent offense right now. So everything kind of points towards him having a better year than last year. And the only thing it really comes down to is he going to get injured? But he's 28, doesn't have a huge amount of MLB experience. So I'm not terribly concerned. Most projection systems have him right around 140 games, which is more than enough for him to get over this number easily. But it's also enough for him to get right around 40. And if he stays fully healthy, plays 150 plus, 40 I think is very much in reach for him.
Yeah, a lot more difficult to get hurt playing first base or DH as well. The outfielders diving for balls, shortstop guys up the middle diving for balls tend to have increased injury risk. He's a bigger guy, but yeah, decreased injury risk playing a corner spot or DHing. Jim, go ahead and give me your first pick.
Yeah, I'm going to be a little sneaky. I'm going to do a little combo here on a single player. I'm going to do Austin Riley over 86.5 RBIs and 40 plus homers at plus 340. So Austin Riley is a player just in general I want to be on this season. You know, he had himself a down year last year, as all of Atlanta did. You know, there were either injuries or, lingering stuff. And below the surface, like on the surface, it was definitely an off year for Riley. But if you go under the hood a little bit, things really didn't look that bad. His bat speed was down about a mile per hour. That's not anything crazy. He actually had the hardest hit rate of his career. His X slug was down around 20 points. It really wasn't the dramatic drop off that we saw in his actual numbers. And this is a guy, again, reaching kind of that prime age. He had the highest fly ball rate of his career, actually. And this Braves team now is set up to look a lot better this season. They got a lot of their pieces back. They'll probably be slow rolling Acuna to a bit, but having that bat at the top of the lineup at all is going to be great for the RBI potential for Riley. His OPS was nearly 80 points lower with runners in scoring position than with nobody on last season. That has not been the case for his entire career. He's not like a player who struggles with runners in scoring position. Oopsie has him for 36 homers and 120 RBI. I think it's a little bit hot, but it speaks to the fact that he is one of those guys. Oopsie loves the savant, the bat swing, the exit velocity, the hard hit rate, that type of stuff. Those are players usually I'm trying to market or trying to hit in the market, and that 40 plus gives us a little bit of the ceiling as well. I think he's a guy who, even in a year where almost everything went wrong, he was right around these numbers. If things break right and Atlanta's a little bit healthier, I think he should be really, really solid. And even the projection systems that aren't Oopsie and aren't weighing that savant data have him in the mid 90s for RBI. I think he's one of those where he's got the high floor. I love these types we talked about in the long shots pod as well. High floor, high ceiling as well. Those type of guys you want to be able to get them on the floor of the RBI, kind of the baseline, but also a little bit of the ceiling to get that 40 plus homers. He's just a guy in general I'm going to love in a lot of markets this season.
Yeah, these Braves guys seem to take turns every year in terms of who has their career year. It seemed like everybody 2 years ago had a career year, but I'm still waiting for the peak season from Riley. I think we're going to get it at one point in the next 2 years. Another guy I love, fantasy. I think a long shot, down ballot MVP candidate at 50-1. Love Austin Riley this year. Liked him coming into last year. Just had some injuries to deal with, but he was crushing. Jim, staying with you for second pick for you in the draft. Go ahead.
I'm gonna take our first under here. I'm going to go with Carlos Santana under 63.5 RBIs. The guy who's going to be 39 in less than a month. He's going from the 10th best stadium for home runs to the 26th best. Last season, he had 71 RBIs in 150 games. But in kind of the flip side of Austin Riley, his OPS was 70 plus points higher with runners in scoring position than the bases empty. Again, that is not something that I would expect to repeat. And slightly worse offensive situation, both stadium and teammates wise. So Carlos Santana, older player, looking at the unders, there's the injury possibility. There's just the, skill level fall off at age 39 for a guy who was a catcher for part of his career. It's kind of amazing what he did last season. And it was fun. Honestly, it was kind of fun to see a guy his age still out there killing it. But those are the type of guys I'm going to be looking to fade in terms of their floor. The bottom really feels like it could drop off at any point for Santana. So I'll be looking at any of the under markets you can get out there for Carlos Santana. But the RBI is my favorite way to approach it.
Just don't like the offense for that team this year either generally. So opportunities could be hard to come by. Grant, your second pick in this draft. Go ahead.
All right, I'm rolling with Corey Seager over 27.5 home runs. Also like his 40 plus at plus 450. I mean, the big issue with Seager over the last few years has kind of been health. I mean, 123 games last year, 119 the year before. I mean, but both those years, 33 and 30 home runs. We look at his StatCast data, absolutely fantastic. In the high 90s percentile in barrel, hard hit rate, right around 90 with exit velocity. He's been very good. And it's just kind of been a issue of, is he going to stay healthy? Which back in 2022, 151 games. He's only 30 years old, so not quite in the range where we're that worried about injury, even though he has a pretty big injury history. So taking a little gamble on health here, but if he stays healthy and you just want to go with the more long shot bet, plus 450 for 40 plus home runs. If he stays healthy, I think that he should get there the majority of the time. It's just all about how many games he plays, but in solid ballpark still, like getting better, it seems like almost every single year. All the underlying numbers are absolutely fantastic. And so 40 plus is not out of the realm of possibilities, but even if he only plays 120 games, 110 games, he can still definitely hit the over at 27.5.
For those unaware, there's now a metric called Seager that is meant to measure swing selection data. It is based on Seager because he's so freaking good at swinging at pitches that are good to damage and avoiding pitches that he's not going to be able to do anything with. One of the best batter's eye in terms of judging what to swing at in the game of baseball. My second prop I'm going to give out, this is maybe my favorite prop amongst any player prop this year. Corbin Carroll to lead MLB in runs at 20-1. He was the runs leader over the second half of last season. As Jim pointed out on our long shots episode, the Diamondbacks led all of MLB in runs last season. And Carroll was really struggling offensively at the start of the year, production-wise. didn't have his power. It seemed like that shoulder injury from the prior year was continuing to linger. But he really picked up his production in the second half, finished third in wins above replacement in the National League in the second half. I think he's a viable MVP candidate at 45-1, 40-1, but I really like him to lead the league in runs. I have him doing that about 10% of the time. Would bet that down to 10-1 or better. Corbin Carroll runs leader. And before that, or with that second round pick, before we get to the next round, I just want to remind everybody that now is the perfect time with Major League Baseball right around the corner to sign up for Action Pro if you have not already. You can get real-time alerts from both myself and other action experts, including Sean Kerner's strikeout prop projections and more. Right now, new subscribers can get $20 off a year of Action Pro. Visit actionnetwork.com/pro and use promo code POD20. That's promo code $20. Promo code POD20 for $20 off an entire year. So be covered for March Madness, NBA, NHL playoffs, upcoming baseball season, and next college football and NFL seasons too. So don't wait. Visit actionnetwork.com/pro right now and use promo code POD20 for $20 off a year of Action Pro. Staying with me to start off the third round, I've got a couple of choices here on my guy, Yordan Alvarez. I'm going to go with his RBI leader prop at 25-1 ahead of his home run leader prop at 25-1, though I think either is super viable. I project both in the same range. I make them about 6%, 7% each. It's about 16-1, 17-1, which is, that's where I'd bet them down to about 16-1, 17-1, respectively. Yordan's peak season is coming at some point soon. We haven't seen the best from this guy yet, but he is, in terms of Statcast data, probably the most well-rounded hitter in baseball. Struggled with injuries every year, ankle injuries, leg injuries, knee injuries, DHing more this season, not having to run around in the outfield, I think is going to be a huge benefit for his overall production. Doesn't have as much talent hitting in front of him as he has in years past, so maybe that's why that RBI number floated up from 15-1 last year to 25-1 this year. But as I said, his home run, RBI leader bets both super viable, 25-1, and I like those way more than his MVP odds at 9-1, 8-1. I think those are way too short, considering, again, he's going to be DHing, and he's not going to get the wins above replacement boost from playing a position in the field this year that he has in years past. So Yordan, stat leader bets, my third round pick. Going back to Grant for a bet that I think I'm going to absolutely love if he's going with the player I believe he's going with for pick number 3.
Yeah, I'm rolling with O'Neal Cruz over 22.5 home runs. I don't want to take the 40+ here, just don't love the odds. He's still got some things to figure out, but I mean, in terms of raw power, I don't know if there's a better raw power hitter in the entire league. I mean, 100th percentile in bat speed, 99th in average exit velocity, 97th in barrel rate, 97th in hard hit rate. Like, he is just absolutely incredible when he actually hits the ball. I mean, obviously, strikeouts are a huge issue for him. Lefty versus lefty matchups are pretty big issues, but those are both things that kind of get a little bit better as time goes on for a lot of players. And so he was 30% K rate last season, and second half of last season got a little bit better, but all the underlying power metrics are just absolutely incredible for this guy. And this is not that high of a number. Like, 22.5 is not that high of a number at all. The guy had 21 last year. If he can stay healthy, should play 140 to 150 games this season. So we're really betting on just the raw power numbers, which, again, he's only had one full season in the majors. He's only at 244 total games played in the majors. I think he's going to take another step. His first year in the league had 17 home runs in 87 games. I think that's more the pace that we're kind of expecting from him based on the underlying numbers, around a mid-30s guy on 162 games pace, so low 30s for 140. So this number, I think, is just drastically too low for him. And unless he regresses or gets injured, in all likelihood, he's going to hit the over in this spot.
Yeah, love that. His projection range this year from the 7-8 different projection systems on Fangraphs have him between 22 and 31. But as Jim has cited with Oopsie factoring in more of that batted ball data, that peak exit velocity. And those are data points that are very indicative after one sample. Once you set a new high in peak exit velocity, max exit velocity, that actually raises your overall power ceiling going forward. These are kind of data points that raise your projection ceiling once you're able to hit these benchmarks. I think that 31 number from Oopsie is really closer to where Oneil Cruz finishes this year. I think the breakout is coming. He's at the right age for it. He's at the right point in his skills development and the adjustments he's going to make to major league pitching. Love the over 22.5. What do you know offhand, Grant? What was the number for 40 plus? I know you said you didn't love it.
I don't know if he even had 40 plus over on the majority of the sites. I think that FanDuel was at, I want to say like 12 to 1 is I think the only spot I found it, but I could be wrong there. I mean, it's still not terrible. I mean, maybe go 30 plus at like plus 450 or something like that.
Yeah, that
it's
seems
not a terrible
interesting
number, but I mean, 40 is in the realm of possibilities,
would,
but he's going to have to take a big step forward to get there.
Sean, I would almost go with the if you're going to go for the 40 plus. I find that those 40 plus they do kind of, because there's no flip side of it. There's no the numbers are sometimes a little shorter than they should be. I feel like you just go for the full ceiling. Like you tossed out in passing in our long shots Oneil Cruz to lead the league in homers, because then it's like if he's getting up near 40 and we get an Aaron Judge injury, something like that, he could be in it, and that number is like 120 to 1 instead of 12 to 1 or 14 to 1. So I think if you play the ladder, it should be like the baseline 30 plus, and then just go all the way and make it the league leader. Have a little fun, do a tiny little sprinkle there, because I'm with you. I love this bet, and I love Oneil Cruz for dingers this year.
Yeah, I don't know if I see him getting past like 42, 43, even the 99th percentile outcome. I'm curious where Pacoda has him in terms of their 99th percentile outcome. But, think about the standard deviation, like range of 21 to 31. So you can get like 10 extra above or below. So you kind of get to like that low 40s at the upper end. But yeah, that's a really fun bet, Grant. I really like that one. Another guy I'm going to be targeting in fantasy this year. I think the breakout's coming for Oneil Cruz. Jim, you've got a prop that I really like as well, due to a lineup spot switch this preseason that I think is providing value on Kyle Schwarber over Ribbies. Go ahead.
Yeah, you can get his RBIs at 89.5 right now out there, which feels incredibly low. This is a very steady guy. He's only missed more than a dozen games once in the last 6 seasons. He's cleared this number in 4 of the 5 healthy seasons he has played in that stretch, and that's been as mostly at the top of the lineup. The last 2 seasons, last year he was exclusively the leadoff guy. The year before, the vast majority of his plate appearances came from the top spot in the lineup. This spring, they're mixing things up down in Philly and putting Trey Turner there to try and get him going a little bit more, which is going to really open up the door for potential for Schwarber RBI. I think you could even sprinkle RBI leader here, but he has the floor of, a relatively healthy guy. He has incredible StatCast metrics. Like Grant was saying, for Oneil Cruz, Schwarber is one of those guys who's top 1% for bat speed, exit velocity, hard hit rate. He's checking all of those boxes. Oopsie again is the high. Usually the guys I like are the guys that Oopsie likes. Shocking, given I love the savant metrics. They have him for 114 RBIs. The rest of the projections have him, kind of mid to high 90s. I think he clears 100 here. He had 104 each of the last 2 seasons, and yeah, now with the potential to go down in a lineup, even if it's only for maybe they do it for 2 months to start the season, that could be a difference of 5 to 6 RBIs to bump him up, even if he misses a couple of weeks, and get him clear of that, to get to that 90 number. This is probably my favorite floor bet of the season. I think he's got an incredibly high floor. And then you can sprinkle the RBI leader, especially with the batting order switch up. But I think the baseline here is the safest way to play it. And at 89.5, I really love this bet.
He's still 40 to 1 for RBI leader at BetMGM. I took him at 50 to 1. I took Trey Turner runs leader at 50 to 1. Once their lineup spots switched, I probably wouldn't bet either below 30 to 1 in either category, but I still think RBI leader worth a poke. He's going to have to maintain that lineup spot all year. We'll see if Rob Thompson ultimately allows him to do that. We may have some head-to-head here in the 4th round between Jim and Grant, so I'm going to go ahead and, it's Jim's pick, so Jim gets to pick first in the 4th round, and then Grant can go ahead and tell him why he's wrong.
Well, I'm slightly terrified. I love tailing Grant's home run props. I know Grant is a home run savant, so I was slightly scared when I came in the doc and saw that we were going head to head. However, the 2 numbers we're giving out, theoretically there is a little bit of a middle here, and I'll walk through why I like the under on Kyle Tucker's home run. So I have Kyle Tucker under 29.5 home runs. This seems crazy. This is a guy who I year after year love Kyle Tucker, so I'm a little surprised to see myself on the low end of this. But there are a few things that signaled to me that I wanted to be on the under here. So last season, he did have 23 homers in 78 games. That's an incredible pace. He really seemed to be kind of breaking out on that front. But I will say there's a few factors that make me, reconsider that a little bit. So he only had 16.8 X home runs. So he got pretty lucky in terms of, some of those home runs clearing that maybe weren't, full stadium, every stadium. And that's part of this, is he's going from the 11th best stadium for left-handed home runs to the 18th best stadium for left-handed home runs. So if we think of that as 17 home runs in about half a season, shave off 1 or 2 for going to a tougher ballpark, we're now right around 30, and that's in a full season off of a year in which he did have a little bit of health concerns. So I think that's, arguably the best case to get him to this under. And there's a little nugget listening to Effectively Wild podcast. They had Sahadav Sharma on. He was talking about how last year the wind was blowing out a lot in Chicago at Wrigley, and it kind of inflated some of those home run numbers. So I think, you could make the case that 18th number maybe even drops a little bit more. We're sitting around a full season pace of 30 home runs for Tucker. Anytime the full season pace is right at the number that you're getting with a player who, he does have a high floor, and in seasons past, he's been pretty healthy, but even, one 15-day DL stint, and now he's, looking to be projected under this. I will take the under, but again, when I saw Grant on the over, I know you skew towards the over as well for a player who I do love. Makes me a little nervous, but the opportunity of doing a little head to head and setting up a nice little middle was too fun to pass up. So Grant, I'll let you make the case for the over now.
Yeah, well, I mean, you just look, the injury concern, I'm not terribly concerned at. I mean, that's the first time in his 5 seasons in the bigs where he's really been injured at all. And the guy keeps getting better every single year. I mean, the K rate is way down there at 15%. Like, he's got a great eye. He's not really chasing a ton of stuff. He's great ball selection. The power numbers are good. They aren't O'Neal Cruz good. But he's in like the 85th percentile. I don't think he qualified last season. But last year, 23 home runs on a half season pace. I'm assuming that he should play 150 games. Again, I'm not terribly concerned about the injury that he had last year. Ballpark downgrade is a little bit of concern, but this number is just at 27.5. It's not nearly high enough. At 29.5, you're probably not getting nearly as much value. I mean, most projection systems, and this is a spot where I'm actually higher than most of the projection system. A lot of the other stuff I look at, I'm like, all right, we're kind of on the same page. This one, every projection system has them right around 27 to 31, so they're right in that range. But I think that he's a guy that just keeps getting better every single year. And yes, it may not just only be with the power, like every other aspect. Kyle Tucker has been drastically undervalued. Me and Sean talked about it during the AL West preview that Tucker is a massive loss for Houston. And I think he's just in for a very good season over in Chicago. Yes, the ballpark is a concern. But to me, like, this is a guy who's hit the over in 3 of the last 4 years at this number, even with the ballpark downgrade, probably right around that number. And he's a guy that's only getting better year after year. He's in his peak power year of 28. There you go, Sean. I said it. So all the numbers, like, kind of point towards 30 being about the right line, 27 being too low, which you can get 27. I think 1 or 2 different spots. I think MGM has that. But I am just higher on him than a lot of projection systems. I think he was on an unreal, like, MVP caliber pace last season before the injury. And I think he's a guy that's gotten better each year he's been in the league, and is a guy that's primed for a massive season this year.
Yeah, he was on a 9.7 full season wins above replacement pace last year. Absolutely was in the MVP conversation. I think he's going to be in the MVP conversation in the NL this year. It's going to be very difficult to overcome Ohtani pitching and hitting. Ohtani is projected about 2 wins above replacement above every other player in the National League, which is Juan Soto right behind him. But Tucker, for me, is a clear top 10 player in baseball. He's so difficult to bet for stat leaders or just the bet in general, aside from taking an over-under like Grant is, because he's excellent at everything, but he's not the best in the league at anything. But when you add up the entire skill set, it's kind of where I expect Wyatt Langford to progress to this year, honestly. Like, I view them in very similar profiles where they're super well-rounded, hit for average, hit for power, run fast, field really well. Kyle Tucker is only 28, 125 career homers, nearly 100 in career steals. Let's see, how many hits? He has 615 hits. I don't know if he's on a Hall of Fame trajectory, but if he adds an MVP to the season, I think he is. in his mid-20s, very much starting to get there, especially when you add the World Series hardware, etc. on top of it. This is the most underrated superstar in baseball, in my opinion. I'm going to side with Grant. I'm going to lean over on Tucker. Not something I'm actually betting, but King Tuck for MVP, 15-1 or better, worth a bet for me this season. The awards bet I'm actually going to take for my fourth bet in the fourth, or my fourth overall pick. My bet here in the fourth round, Logan Gilbert, AL Cy Young at 16-1. I'm sure that makes Grant a little bit excited too. Mariners fan in the house. Gilbert was second in strikeout minus walk rate in the second half last year behind Blake Snell. He changed his pitch mix a little bit last year. Also added a pitch coming into this year, but second half of last year, strikeout rate bumped up about 7%, went from 19.8% to 27.7% for Logan Gilbert in the second half. And strikeout rate is one of those data points that stabilizes after about a month of games, 5-6 starts. Strikeout rate really stabilizes very quickly. So that's something you can kind of carry for him going forward into this year. His walk rate has been about 4.5% each of the past 2 years. So this is a guy who knows how to locate, knows where he's putting the ball. And now that he's comfortable with his command and the adjustments he's made at the big league level, he's starting to finalize the arsenal he's going with going forward. He started throwing a cutter at the beginning of last year, and he moved away from it as the year went on, moved more towards his curveball in the second half down the stretch as that strikeout rate increased, and then started introducing his sinker even a little bit too near the end of the year, pulling a little bit more off of his four-seam fastball. So generally speaking, coming into the year last year, he said, I'm going to start throwing the four-seamer less. I'm going to start mixing in other stuff. He mixed and matched those different pitches, and by the end of the year, it seemed like he had optimized this full mix. The reason why he didn't have a better second half, despite that strikeout minus walk rate, 55% strand rate, which is about 20% below where you would expect for a pitcher of his caliber. So expecting a monster year for Logan Gilbert in 2025, elite extension, phenomenal arsenal, great command, and probably the best pitcher's park in baseball. 16-1 for AL Cy Young. Like that down at about 12-1 or better. And then my final pick, before I turn it over to the guys for their final picks, Juan Soto, home run leader at 33-1, 30-1, 25-1, even 20-1 would be fine for me. I project him seventh in home runs this year, about a 4.5% chance to lead the league in homers. Last year, 48 expected home runs, actual 45. Prior career high before that was 31. And I believe that was in the 2019 season when the ball was juiced up. So a huge growth in power from Juan Soto last year had nothing to do with the Yankees' short porch in right field. He was putting them out to all fields. If he played every game in Cincinnati last year, StatCast says he would have hit 63 home runs. So Juan Soto's power is getting to the point where he ranks among the top guys in the league and being able to get to it in game. There's a difference between raw power, like we talked about with O'Neal Cruz or Elly De La Cruz, and guys who can actually get to that power in game, like Juan Soto is showing increasingly that he's able to do. So generational talent. Think he's going to pass 50 home runs at peak. Maybe it happens this season. Juan Soto, 30-1 for home run leader. Fine, down to 25-1. Grant, go ahead and give me your final prop. It's one of my favorite players, a guy I already talked about on this show. So Yordan's home run prop. How are you playing this?
Yeah, and I fully agree with your potential. Yordan, 25-1 RBI leader, a home run leader. I'm just going with the over 33.5 home runs because this has a just massive edge to it. I mean, we talk about O'Neal Cruz and his StatCast data and where he's at. Yordan is pretty much in the same spot on almost everything, except for, he only strikes out at a 15% clip. Like, he's putting the ball in play way more often than O'Neal Cruz, and every single StatCast category is just incredible for him. 98th in WX WOBA, 95th in exit velocity, 92nd in barrels, 93rd in hard hit rate, 97th in bat speed, K rate 88 percentile. Like, every single stat is so incredible, and it is a little bit of a downgrade, losing a lot of the bats in this offense and probably not getting as many at-bats throughout the season because this offense isn't as stacked as it's been in the past. But he's been so good every single year he's been in the league, and that K rate has come down every single year he's been in the league. He's putting the ball in play way more often, probably less of a worry of walking in with not as many bats in that lineup here. So should get more at-bats this season. he hasn't had a season where he's played 150, 155 games. He's maxed out at 144. Injuries are a little bit concerned with him just because he's been injured a little bit every single year, but he's playing mostly DH. Like, he should have a possibility of 150, 155 games, especially considering the Astros are in that tough division with the Rangers, the Mariners. Like, it's tough to give the guy the day off when you're right in the thick of things with other teams trying to just make even a wild card appearance, where in the past, outside of last year for a short period of time, they've kind of been locked into a playoff appearance every single year. Like, they've been pretty certain that they're going to at least make the playoffs. This year could be a little bit different. We could see a few extra games out of him. And that power, like all the StatCast numbers, kind of point towards him having more home runs each of the last few years than he's actually had. And granted, 1 year he only played 114, 1 year he only played 135. But you look at Oopsie and you look at the Bat X that incorporate that StatCast data, both of them are higher than the other projections. So every single projection system has him over this number by at least, I think, 2 home runs. And the ones that incorporate the actual StatCast data, they're over by like 6 or 7.
Yordan Goat, I hope this is the year it finally happens for him, for me, for everybody who's a fan of this generational talent, because if you don't watch Yordan Alvarez enough, people who do pay attention to baseball, I think people are more afraid of him than Aaron Judge coming up in a big spot. I mean, you're a Mariners fan, Grant, like top of the ninth, runners on base, Munoz is in the game. Who would you rather see, Judge or Alvarez? I feel like it'd be Judge, right?
Yeah, it'd be Judge.
Yordan's scary. He's done it in the postseason.
So good.
He does it against lefties. And I think that's the scariest aspect of his profile. Kyle Tucker's profile as well. This kind of speaks to maybe the Astros struggles this year. I don't want to get too off topic, but Yordan and Tucker are 2 of the best left-on left hitters in baseball. You don't need to platoon anything. You don't need to take them out there. And frankly, when you bring in a lefty to face them, you're not gaining any sort of advantage relative to just keeping in a righty against them, maybe for that own lefty splits. But yeah, like the 2 left-on-left dominant guys, now you're moving away from that. You have won this year, but Yordan doesn't lose anything going against left-handed pitching. So it doesn't matter if they bring in loogies to face them. Only going to gain anything if you try to pitch around him is maybe the worry this year, right? With a less potent lineup around him. But bring in Christian Walker. Walker's still 33. I think he can still produce at a high level this season. Jim, going to close it out with our final pick, going with an under on a K prop. I don't know if we've talked about many pitcher props on this episode, but a guy who has a lot of hype coming into 2025, a very short odds in the AL Cy Young market. So who are you going under on?
I'm going under on Garrett Crochet's strikeouts at 199.5. Now, this is the guy, like you said, very buzzy, very, very trendy guy right now, and he does have a lot of talent. But what I'll say about this, and I bring this up not to victory lap future CLV, because it's kind of a made up thing, and if you post something, it's going to move stuff and all that. But I posted this in the app at 212.5 about a month ago, and I bring this up to say that if you get these numbers when they first come out, the pitchers almost entirely will come down, especially if you target guys with a little bit of health scare risk. And Crochet is a guy who I have some fear of his health risk. Sarah says health risk. It's in the 60s. The other guy I posted was Chris Sale. That's also come down a lot. So again, I say this again, not the victory lap, but say if you grab these numbers on pitcher strikeouts when they first come out, you can actually grab the number initially at a high number. Now, someone like Crochet, I'm going to like the under even still here at 199. If we look at a projection system like Oopsie, it has him at 202, but that's in 31 starts. So that really means you can't have an IL stint. You have to make basically every start. He probably will get 33. Maybe he could get to 31 with one really brief IL stint, but basically it's saying you're healthy all season, and that, clears it by a tiny bit. He was like at 206 last season, in what was, a career high strikeout rate for him. So if there's any comeback there, again, he could go under this that way, even being healthy all season. But if you can grab those opening numbers on some pitchers, like a Pablo Lopez opened at like 190, he's down around 180. If we get to regular season, it might be around 175. You actually leave yourself a decent chance to middle at a number that actually is very viable. It's like the where the projection systems have them, you're going to have the high end under, the low end over, and set yourself up for some nice middles. I did that last year with Framber Valdez, was able to land that plan. I always will probably go a little bit smaller on the overs, just because we're in this era where pitcher health it's so dicey. We've seen, we're still in spring training and guys are dropping like flies. So pitcher under strikeouts are always going to be a look for me. But if you grab them at those really early opening numbers, some of the guys who are, a little bit less health risk variant, then you can get a nice little middle and set yourself up for a market that they haven't figured out yet. They should post the low numbers early and then move them up as they go instead of the other way around. But they seem to be posting high. You can bet them down and then get yourself a nice little middle. So I still like Crochet under 199.5, but this is more just a keep your eyes open when this market opens up, grab some unders on pitchers who seem like they have got dicey health options for the season ahead.
If you like Crochet's over, go ahead and bet him to lead the league in strikeouts at 13-1. I think that's a much better bet than betting him over 199, 179, regardless of where it closes. Crochet, if he's going over that number, he's going to be in contention to lead the league. He should be at 200 plus. Well, if he clears 199, he'll obviously be at 200 plus. But if he's at 200 plus, he's within range to lead the league in 13-1. A much better number than laying minus 110 at that point. Jim, before we get to any final bets you guys may have, I just wanted to talk briefly about that injury number that Eno puts out. That's 60%-ish. I know you talked about the guys on the Diamondbacks roster being in like the 90%. Is that percentage chance of staying healthy for the entire season, essentially, like 90% versus 60%? Is that roughly what that means? Do you know?
That's a great question. I'm not 100% sure. I know last year he did it on a grade system. There was like an A versus a C minus a D, F. And I'm kind of wondering if this just translated a number, like a grade over to a number. I don't think it's an exact science on like chance of staying healthy. I think it's more like maybe on a sliding scale of this pitcher is among the more healthy. I would read it that way instead of a percent odds of staying healthy. I believe, although I again should triple check this and then maybe I can follow up with a tweet or something. I believe that it's on a scale of these are healthier pitchers, these are less healthy pitchers. That's how I was reading it for this, at least.
So in terms of how I project all this stuff out, everybody has an assigned health grade. Crochet is a D for me on an A through F scale. Crochet threw about 146 innings last year. Prior to last year, his career high in innings was 65 in his senior year at Tennessee. He didn't stay healthy through college, didn't stay healthy through the minors, didn't stay healthy until last season. So a big injury risk guy, and a guy I give, which is why I was curious about that 60% number, I give him about a 40% chance of sustaining a significant enough injury this season where it takes him out of contention for Cy Young or stat leader. So just worth noting, I thought that 60% number was interesting because that's roughly, where I put him as well in terms of like a numerical value. A D health grade for me is about a 40% loss in expected playing time across all possible 10,000 simulations of a season that I run. So in those 10,000 simulations, Crochet is automatically disqualified from contention in 40% of them, right? And then the other 60% is going to be all of the distribution of his range of outcomes. Just want to contextualize how I kind of project out these categories. Before we get out of here, guys, I just want to hear any final thoughts you may have on any teams, player props, etc. that we didn't get to, because these are our final preseason preview pods. We'll be coming back next week to preview the Japan series. So Grant, any other final preseason thoughts you have before we get out of here?
I think we talked about this in the AL West preview, but a guy that didn't quite make the list is Brett Rooker and his home run overs. Like this guy, it cannot be overstated how much of a difference it is going to be moving ballparks from Oakland, just an absolute terrible ballpark to hit home runs in, over to Sacramento in that AAA ballpark, and the hot weather, everything kind of goes. I mean, we look at his splits between home versus away last year. It's massive, and it makes complete sense. Like, Oakland is terrible to hit home runs in, and he had 24 home runs on the road, only 15 at home. He could potentially be in for 155, 160 games playing for this team. Like, they're not trying to throw. They're out of Oakland finally. They're, in all likelihood, going to Vegas. I know that's still got some weird stuff to it. Who knows what will happen, but he is just so good. And we've seen this with so many different guys. Look at Matt Olson going from Oakland to the Braves. I mean, we saw just an absolutely huge season out of him a few years ago. And Rooker not playing in Oakland anymore, this could be massive for him. And I would not be surprised at all to see him get 50 home runs this season. So home run leader is all the way up at 30-1 over at DK. I think there's a lot of value on that one.
Yeah, I completely agree. He's on my home run leader list. I love Brent Rooker. I think he remains underrated because of where he plays. And, You also look at the home road splits from the past couple of seasons. Last year, I want to just get this exact. So last year, Rooker at home had, and it's even more drastic over a 2-year sample, 24 homers on the road, 15 at home. Last year, 2 years ago, 17 on the road, 13 at home, about the same number of plate appearances. It's just very evident he's able to get to his power more. It's more productive when he's away from Oakland. I should comment too on the Rays and their new stadium, the minor league stadium, Steinbrenner Field, which has the same dimensions as Yankee Stadium, but they're going to be playing in Florida weather as opposed to New York weather. So not getting those cold April temperatures, not getting those colder October temperatures, early October, right? But left-handed power in Tampa Bay this year should play up a little bit more. So if you're a fantasy guy, Josh Lowe, Brandon Lau, these guys are going to get a little bit more home runs from the left-handed side of the plate hitting in Tampa Bay, or hitting at Steinbrenner Field as opposed to hitting in the Trop in Tampa Bay. Jim, any other final thoughts, player props, team thoughts, etc. that you have before we close things out here with preseason?
Well, that's pretty funny. Brandon Lau over his home run total and 30 plus were on my list of last second additions here. So the nice smooth transition. I also had Matt Olson. Grant just mentioned him over his RBIs. Real weird Freddie Freeman under RBIs in terms of age and health concerns, along with his previous hitting with runners in scoring position. Great clutch player, but in general, I'm going to be looking for that to come back to earth a little bit. And then a few that we talked about on the long shots odd. I like Vladito to lead the league in hits, plus 1,100. I like Pete Crow Armstrong to lead the league in triples at plus 2,800. And Ryan Walker to lead the league in saves at 30-1. And then I'll just say, I got to talk about them a lot on that podcast, less so on this. Big fan of the Diamondbacks this season. Going to be on them every which way. Not a player prop stuff, maybe some Carroll stuff, either triples or MVP or runs. I know that runs one you love. I'm right there with you. So just all things Diamondbacks from a team perspective. But I am looking forward to getting the season started.
That'll do it for us here on Payoff Pitch. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss our best bets every Monday, Tuesday, and Friday throughout the Major League Baseball regular season. Also, make sure to download the free award-winning Action Network app and follow all of Action's experts and track your own bets. Thanks to Grant and to Jim for joining me today. That was a great episode. Enjoyed talking player props and some expectations for 2025 with them. I'm Sean Zerillo. We'll see you next time here on Payoff Pitch.